Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tanamane, Namaste Saraswatundeve, Kauravani Pracharane, Nirvishesha Shrunivadi Paskatyade Satarane. Today I'm going to read from the Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 7, Knowledge of the Absolute, text number 28. Yesham Tvanta Katam Papam, Janam Punya Karmanam, Te Dvandva Moha Nirmukpa, Vajante Mam Dridavritaha. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. Prabhupada's purport. Those eligible for elevation to the transcendental position are mentioned in this verse. For those who are sinful, atheistic, foolish, and deceitful, it is very difficult to transcend the duality of desire and hate. Only those who have passed their lives in practicing the regular principles of religion, who have acted piously, and who have conquered sinful reactions, can accept devotional service and gradually rise to the pure knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then gradually they can meditate in trance on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the process of being situated on the spiritual platform. This elevation is possible in Krishna consciousness in the association of pure devotees. From the association of great devotees, one could be delivered from delusion. It is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.2 that when one actually wants to be liberated, he must render service to the devotees. Mahat Sevam Dwaram Ahor Vimukte. But for one who associates with materialistic people, is on the path leading to the darkest region of existence. Tamo Dwaram Yoshitam Sangi Sangam. All the devotees of the Lord transverse this earth just to recover the conditioned souls from their delusion. The impersonalists do not know that forgetting their constitutional position as subordinate to the Supreme Lord is the greatest violation of God's law. Unless one is reinstated in his own constitutional position, it is not possible to understand the Supreme Personality or to be fully engaged in his transcendent loving service with determination. So the text again. Yesham tvantakatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvandva moha nirmuktva vajante mam dridavrataha. Persons who have acted piously in previous life and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. So, this is a very nice summary of our entire philosophy of Krishna consciousness, up to the point of especially liberation. As it's mentioned in the Padma Purana, Smarta Vyaksaratam Vishnu, Vismartak Jatu Nakinshit, Sarva Vidi Nisedyasyur, Etayor Eva Kinkara. That everything we're doing has two purposes. One of them is to always remember Krishna, and the other is to never forget him. That is the entire philosophy of the Vedas. If one does the activities that will help one always remember Krishna, and the activities which will help one not to forget Krishna, then one is fulfilling all the do's and the don'ts in the Vedic literature. Now, there is a gradual process of elevation to the platform of becoming absorbed in Krishna consciousness. Because as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Daivi Yesha Gunamai Mama Maya Dharatya Mam Eva Ye Prapadyante Mayam Etam Tarantite. That this material energy consisting of the three modes is difficult to overcome. But those who have taken shelter in me can easily cross beyond them. So we should not be disappointed that presently we're in the illusory energy, because that's where we are. And part of being in the illusory energy rather than the spiritual energy is that we're disappointed. And it's an illusion to be disappointed. After all, the only thing we can be disappointed about is our material circumstances. And considering that no one has good material circumstances in the material world, because everyone is equally disqualified in the sense that everyone has a body that's going to grow old, become diseased, and then disappear. And if we don't become fully conscious of Krishna, then we get another birth to again try to make progress in solving our real problems, which is not anything that's going wrong in the material world, because in the material world, everything goes wrong. If we think somehow or another, my life is not going perfectly, that's very good. It means we have some knowledge. And if I think I'm doing great, now finally I got some relief, then we're in ignorance, because there is no relief in the material world. There's only temporarily thinking that we're in a good position, where there is no good position in the material world. But there is a good position in the spiritual world. That is, the spiritual world is the opposite of the material world. In the spiritual world, nothing goes wrong. And in the material world, nothing goes right. Now, we can work to make this material world as comfortable as possible. And there's actually nothing wrong with doing something in order to make our lives somewhat comfortable, because otherwise we'd be distracted by the intense suffering that goes on in the material world. But when we make our lives comfortable, we should not do it at the expense of our Krishna consciousness, because that's the only real world in which we can actually be comfortable. The very ways we're trying to be happy in the material world can only be found in the spiritual platform of consciousness. In other words, we don't have to worry about going to the spiritual world right now, because we're already in the spiritual world. It's a spiritual world for those who are working in Krishna consciousness, and it's for everyone else, it's the material world. So we don't have to worry about going anywhere, except for raising our consciousness. And there's the process of doing it, as mentioned here. And it all depends upon how much we focus our attention and give our love to Krishna. Now, Lord Krishna doesn't have to be, in one sense, advertised, because he is the reservoir of pleasure, and he is the reservoir of all love and bliss and all opulences. But we have to take to a process by which we can actually experience Krishna in order to realize that. Otherwise, our glorification of Krishna cannot continue perpetually unless we become eligible so that Krishna reveals himself to us. It is not very difficult for Krishna to reveal himself to us, because he's sitting in our heart, waiting for the opportunity. most of the opportunity means that we have to develop the right attitude. And the beginning of that attitude is, as Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, that we're not this body. Now that itself is not the attitude Krishna is looking for. There are many jnanis in this material world who understand more deeply than we do that we're not this, that they're not their body, that we're not these bodies. But Krishna is looking for another attitude. It's the attitude of service to Krishna. Luckily, service to Krishna is not extremely difficult in this age, especially due to the fact that Krishna has come as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, specifically to give Krishna consciousness as freely as possible to everyone. So, somehow or another, by the mercy of our acharyas and especially Srila Prabhupada, we have an opportunity anywhere at any time to engage in Krishna's service, just by chanting Hare Krishna. As one devotee once told Prabhupada, how can I become a great devotee? And Srila Prabhupada's answer was, don't try to become a great devotee, just try to become a devotee. We're not really interested in becoming great devotees. We're just interested in becoming a humble devotee. Whatever is being done in this world, either material or spiritual, is not done simply by the soul. It's being done by an arrangement of Krishna, either through his material energy or through his spiritual energy. It is simply up to us, according to our present circumstances, to determine whether I'm going to engage myself in a spiritual activity or a material activity. Now that's simply the beginning of Krishna consciousness. Simply the determination that let me do something for Krishna under the guidance of his representatives. Now that's a very important understanding, and it can be deepened by acknowledging that whatever energies we have influence over at the present time actually are Krishna's energies. Now, it's not a philosophical statement, a theory, it's a fact. And it can be realized immediately just by doing something for Krishna. For instance, looking over my desk right now, I can see that something needs to be put into place. Now, I could put into place because I like things organized, or I could put into place because I can serve Krishna better. In order to please Krishna, I may want to put it into place. Now, in one sense, it's very nice to have an organized desk, but it's even a nicer desk when it's spiritual. And it's spiritual already, but the question is whether my consciousness is spiritual or not. And the only way my consciousness can become spiritual is if I put Krishna there. Have Krishna is there, even I have a messy desk, then I have a messy desk in Krishna consciousness. And if I have a very organized desk without Krishna, then I have a very nicely organized desk, maybe in the mode of goodness, but in the material energy, because my consciousness is material. Just like I was doing that right now, and I remember I should put my earplugs in, because maybe the sound would be better. So where does that come from? Can you still hear me? So where does that come from? Because Krishna is in our heart. He wants to help us remember that we should do things for him. He doesn't want us to forget that. And therefore, if we do some service to Krishna, then gradually they will come to that remembrance of how to do our activities. Especially how to remember how everything here is Krishna's energy, and how to work under Krishna's guidance of his representatives, so that we feel ourselves to be a servant. That feeling ourselves to be a servant of the servants of Krishna, that's the basis of humility. It is not possible to be truly humble without feeling oneself to be a servant of Krishna's servants. As a matter of fact, the more elevated a devotee is, the more he feels that he's the servant of Krishna's servants. Therefore, it is not a question of only memorizing verses or doing many activities in devotional service or whatever our activities may be. It's also a question of developing that mood that I'm doing it simply as a servant of Krishna's servants to please Krishna. And I'm doing activities which will actually ultimately be productive in helping others become Krishna conscious, because that's the desire of Krishna. Now, others becoming Krishna conscious doesn't mean that I have to save the world, because I have no capacity to save the world. I don't even have a capacity to save myself. Therefore, the first thing I have to do is to find out how to save myself by doing whatever Krishna directs me, so that I can organize my life, as Prabhupada writes in the Bhagavad Gita, in such a way that throughout the 24 hours a day, I cannot help but think about Krishna. And that means that I should assess what opportunities Krishna has given me for service and what Krishna wants me as a priority to do in my present life in order to advance in Krishna consciousness. Included within that will be to help others become Krishna conscious. But first of all, I can't help others become Krishna conscious, or I can only help them as much as I'm actually Krishna conscious. That doesn't mean we shouldn't take opportunities to go on Harinam or distribute books or to tell whoever we meet about Krishna. But we should understand that while we're doing that, we should also try to effectively become more conscious of Krishna ourselves, which means to go through a process of regularly worshiping Krishna, for instance, manmana. And then Bhava Mad Bhakta, try to become Krishna's devotee. And that means try to become the devotee of Krishna's devotees. So Srila Rupa Goswami has told us that anyone who's chanting Hare Krishna, we can take to be on some level of Krishna consciousness. And we should try to appreciate the fact that the soul is engaged in Krishna's service to some degree. Now, in the material world, we can find millions of ways to criticize people. Material nature will give us so much intelligence that even we can criticize Lord Chaitanya. As one devotee once went to Srila Prabhupada and said, Srila Prabhupada, everyone is criticizing me. So Srila Prabhupada said, well, they criticize Lord Chaitanya. So the devotee said, but you don't understand, Prabhupada, everyone is criticizing me. So Prabhupada said, well, they even criticize Lord Chaitanya. If they can criticize the Supreme Person, why can't they, how can they not criticize us? If someone wants to criticize, they'll find many, many ways of criticizing, many, many reasons to criticize. If someone is not Krishna conscious, then they'll criticize practically everyone. one interesting thing we could try during the day, if we're a little conscious, just look around at different devotees and see what is the mood that we have when we see different devotees. Is it the same mood of love and appreciation for every devotee we look at? Or is our intelligence kick in, our memory kicks in, and we find different reasons to love devotees on some level and to criticize them on some other level sometimes? So part of our spiritual advancement is to check our minds and see whether it's our friend or it's our enemy, whether it's in Krishna's service, whether our mind or intelligence are in Krishna's service, or if it's in some other kind of service in the modes of material nature. Now we may think, okay, thank you. It sounds like Siri. Hold on. Okay, so one of our great advancements in devotional service will be when we become introspective and check where our minds are going, where our intelligence is leading us. And if we do that, we become determined to put it in a positive space in Krishna's service. And instead of seeing a devotee and remembering how they stole a glove limit from me 3 years ago, and I've never forgiven them since, that I've always considered them a thief, to think about how wonderful it was, how much they must have enjoyed that spiritual glove limit, and how much credit I get for having had the opportunity that they took a glove limit from me, and I didn't even have to give it to them. That I should have given it to them before they took it, but I wasn't so advanced that they had to steal it from me. In other words, we can see the material world in terms of Krishna's service and Krishna consciousness, and we can see everyone and everything in relation to that, or we can see it in relationship to our past attempts to become something other than Krishna's eternal servants. For instance, Krsna Das Babaji, when he was in Vrindavan, sometimes little puppies would come and they'd eat off his plate. So his servant didn't like that. After all, for Krsna Das Babaji was an exalted spiritual personality, and surely some little dirty dogs from the dham eating off his plate is not very suchi. So the servant would come and try and brush the dogs off of Krsna Das Babaji's plate. But Krsna Das Babaji Maharaj would chastise his servant. He says, more or less, that these are residents of the holy dham. How could you offend them like this? Now, of course, we can't imitate such great souls. I'm not suggesting that now you eat on the street, and when the dogs come, you share your plate with them. But it's simply an example of how we can see things in a positive way in Krishna consciousness, or we can see things in a negative way. Now, we're not in the holy dham, most of us, nor are we going to eat outside and little puppies are going to come and we're going to have them eat off our plate. But we can take whatever circumstance we're under, which is not so extreme, and try to see it in Krishna's service. Try to appreciate it, and try to use our intelligence to respond in a way that's pleasing to Krishna and pleasing to Krishna's devotees. Then Krishna says, Tesham Satatam Yuktanam Bhajantam Prati Purvakam. If we try to remain in Krishna's service and try to generate more enthusiasm for what we're doing, then Krishna will help us. It doesn't mean that by our attempts at the present time, suddenly we're going to be dancing in full ecstasy with all the different sattvika bhavas manifested on our body, all the vyabhichari bhavas manifesting. This is not possible because it explains here, devotional service is a continuum of gradually becoming aware of Krishna. Gradually, as we give up the negative conceptions and gradually we take on positive conceptions, and Krishna gradually reveals himself to us. Not only on the altar, but in everyone's heart, practically speaking, every atom, everywhere, forever. So, Krishna consciousness movement is a great opportunity to just, as follow Krishna's instructions to worship him. Srila Rupa Goswami has given us the book, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which Srila Prabhupada has translated as the Nectar of Devotion, which gives us ample opportunity, ample information, how to worship Krishna and how to become his devotee and the devotee of his devotees. Now, for instance, when Srila Prabhupada was here, there were not many devotees living on the outside of the temple. Every devotee who joined the movement, didn't matter who they were, was automatically included within the temple. You may have been on the street taking intoxication, but when you moved into the temple, you were up at, I guess, 3:30 in the morning, getting ready for Mangalarati. And you were out on the street distributing books that you probably never read. You couldn't even pronounce the names within a very short period of time. And due to the power of the association of devotees, some of these devotees were introduced relatively from what would seem to be unfavorable circumstances. But due to the power of the association and due to the power of devotional service, many of them still stayed and went on to advance in devotional service and gradually understood what they were doing and why they were doing it. Now, due to circumstances and by Krishna's arrangements, not so many devotees live in the temple. They live outside the temple. And they have many other responsibilities. Therefore, it is not so easy all the time to have devotee association. And indeed, unless we're sufficiently advanced, we don't even know the value of the devotee association. It is said that familiarity breeds contempt. So sometimes we don't understand how to utilize that opportunity for devotee association so that we can get the maximum benefit from such association. Now, for instance, in the material world, if we see a good quality in someone, the question is whether it's actually a good quality. It is maybe relatively a good quality in terms of the material energy, but the soul is not utilizing his present circumstances in relation to Krishna. So whatever he's doing will not actually manifest anything spiritual. Whether it's the most exalted person in the world, with the highest position in government, or in industry, or in entertainment, or in sport, or as a person who's simply struggling to hit the little ball with a golf club. They're all equally wasting their time. Of course, due to the fact that there are many saintly persons who have come to this planet over the many millennium, there's some spark of Krishna consciousness or God consciousness within the activities of any normal, any exalted person, we could say. With a little bit of humility, they understand, many of them, that without the mercy of Krishna, without the mercy of God, they could not be in such an exalted position. But as Kali Yuga goes on, that understanding of their dependence on God, everyone's dependence on Krishna, is gradually diminishing. And therefore, people's good qualities are also diminishing. On the other hand, in the association of devotees, any thought we have of appreciation and acceptance of a devotee is greatly appreciated by Krishna. And Krishna always shows his affection and his appreciation. He may not show it immediately, that's up to Krishna how he shows it, but in association of devotees, if we try to appreciate their activities, we try to appreciate their attempts to become Krishna conscious, we try to appreciate the 6 loving exchanges. Someone offers us prasadam or accepts prasadam from us, tells us something about Krishna, or listens to something we have to say about Krishna, or offers us some opportunity to become Krishna conscious, or we offer them some opportunity to become Krishna conscious. So these are the most valuable parts of our existence. Now, due to the fact that most of us live outside the temple, it's always good, if possible, to form some kind of smaller groups where we can meet regularly with our friends in Krishna consciousness. And in those smaller groups of friends in Krishna consciousness, we should hear about Krishna from superior devotees and then talk about our realizations with each other, what we've understood, what we've heard. Every devotee, if we do that, any devotee we do that with who's serious about becoming Krishna conscious, is more or less like associating with one of the devotees in the Krishna book, in the Srimad Bhagavatam. It has the equal potential, and we can appreciate Dhruva Maharaj's exalted activities of trying to become Krishna conscious, and we'll get an equal benefit if we appreciate the exalted activities of any devotee who's trying to become Krishna conscious. They may not have reached perfection as of yet, but if we appreciate their attempts for perfection, then that appreciation is appreciation of a pure devotee. And very quickly we'll become pure devotees ourselves if we appreciate even the attempts of others to become Krishna conscious. Then we should also try to engage in those loving exchanges. And the idea of the loving exchanges is to inspire us in the association of devotees to improve our own worship of Krishna, to chant our rounds better, in better circumstances, with more attention, more appreciation, more concentration, more feelings, that as we can express our feelings to our friends, so we can also express our hopefully loving feelings towards Krishna. Appreciation of how kind Krishna is. And try to appreciate how loving Krishna is. If we remember his activities, then we can also try to experience how loving Krishna is. Now, we may say that that's imagination, but if Krishna wants us to experience a little bit of how loving he is, then within our heart, he'll reveal that to us. So that's not imagination, that's reality. Similarly, how loving Krishna's devotee is, such as Srimati Radharani, or other devotees, if we try to appreciate how loving they are, then Krishna will tell the spiritual energy to reveal it to us to some degree or another. But if we don't have faith that Krishna is the all-loving personality, if we don't have faith that his devotees are also have within our hearts some degree of love and appreciation for Krishna, then how can Krishna reveal himself in that to us? In any case, we should try to chant our rounds in such a way is that we develop some desire to experience what Krishna consciousness is, what it actually is. In the spiritual world, there's no growing industrialization, there's no technology, there's no material progress in the spiritual world. There's only progress of loving exchanges. There's only progress of feeling more and more how loving Krishna is and how loving his devotees are, and trying to and becoming inspired to do more loving service to them also. So if we do that even at the beginning, then we get a higher enough taste that the other desires we have within our heart, which are manifested by principally and foremost is the relationship, at least previously, the relationship between men and women, known as romance. So everyone has that within the heart since time immemorial, this desire for romance, which interpreted according to the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, the desire to become Radha and Krishna. Or as manifested in our literature, not in our literature, in materialistic literature, we have Romeo and Juliet, we have Tarzan and Jane, we have Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse. So that's the prominent experience in the material world that everyone is striving for, is to imitate Radha and Krishna. And that those feelings are amplified through things such as eating animals or eating food not offered to Krishna. And in order to digest the food, in order to heighten the romance, there's intoxication. And of course, the whole world is full of mental speculation. Everyone is glorifying something which is ultimately not very glorifiable. That's called mental speculation. Trying to make something which is really not very pleasant, trying to make it as glorified as something which is extraordinarily enchanting. So that's the job of the illusory energy. But if we take shelter of Krishna with a sincere desire to become Krishna conscious or develop that desire, I mean, no one is born in this material world with a complete desire to become Krishna conscious, unless you're Narada Muni or someone like that. So for most of us, we're struggling how to give up our desire for sinful activity and cultivate a sincere desire to become Krishna conscious. Therefore, there's no need to be worried about giving up sinful activity. The only real need is to worry about becoming Krishna conscious, because ultimately it's not possible to give up sinful activity without becoming Krishna conscious. But we have to understand, philosophically at least, that it's good to give up sinful activity. That these desires are good to disappear, but they only disappear as much as we become Krishna conscious. Therefore, Sri Rupa Goswami has told us, our first business is to anukulyasya sankalpe, try to improve our devotional practices. It may not be extraordinary, We may not get the award immediately for the best sadhana in the movement. We may not get the reward for the most dynamic preacher or the most perfected manager. But that's all right. Our relationship with Krishna is personal. Our relationship with Krishna's devotees is also personal. We only have to worry about appreciating those who are better than we are at these activities, giving them some real appreciation, and then try to improve ourselves. The spiritual world doesn't mean we compete with others to become the best. If we want to compete with each other to become the best, should become the best appreciator, the best acceptor of other devotees, the best cooperator, the most humble. That's sum it up. That's humility. We simply our influence is mostly how we can improve. And the more we improve, then the more we become an instrument for Krishna. And Krishna, he does everything anyhow through his spiritual energies. So we try to make improvement, then Krishna will give us the intelligence how to become better and better at his service. We don't have to worry about, as I said, becoming the best devotee. Our only purpose is to become simply a devotee. There's no competition to get into the spiritual world. There's plenty of room for everyone. It's not that we became a devotee too late and we wind up at the gates of Vaikuntha and there's a sign, no vacancy. Come back next lifetime of Brahma. No, there's plenty of room even here in the material world for service. What to speak of the spiritual world. So, after trying to improve our devotional service, then we can also try to improve, our improvement of our worship of Krishna. We should also find out what's inspiring to us to do for Krishna's service. There's something called shape. We can just summarize that when one is performing devotional service, then naturally Krishna invests us with certain abilities we never knew we had before. They may not even be in our astrological chart, but Krishna invests us with some ability to do something for Krishna's service. That's called the essence shape. H is our heart, where we're naturally inclined to. Some people like to talk to others and inspire them to become Krishna conscious. Some people like to organize things. That's in their heart. They can't. Some devotees are completely comfortable if everything's disorganized and everyone's running around just doing something, and others want to organize them. Some devotees like to be friendly with everyone and appreciate whatever they're doing. Others like to become a little bit more discriminating and perhaps point out things to other devotees to help them improve their devotional service. So there are many different devotees. Everyone has a different heart. But whatever our heart is should be utilized in Krishna's service. Otherwise, we'll feel ourselves to be artificial. If we're given some service we really don't have a heart for, it'll be very difficult to maintain it over a long period of time. And the A means ability. So everyone actually has abilities from birth. Some people like to have a good voice. Some people sound like they're a cat who has his tail stepped on. Now, anyone can sing, and that's appreciated. But if we're going to sing at a big concert before thousands of people, better the devotee who has a sweet voice, like a cuckoo bird, sing, than the devotee who sounds like he's a cat with his tail stepped on. So we do have our abilities, and we should utilize them in Krishna's service. And then we have our personalities. Some devotees are more introverted. Some devotees are more extroverted. Some devotees are more charismatic. Others are more serious. Even in Krishna Lila, Krishna has many different friends. Some, as it says in the Nectar of Devotion, some of them cut jokes with Krishna and make him smile. Some of them are very serious. Some of them like to dance with Krishna. Some of them like to give Krishna advice. Krishna has a whole varieties of friends, and they're all engaged in his service. So we don't deny our personality. We have to simply utilize it properly in Krishna's service and improve it. And E stands for experience. That we should utilize our experience in Krishna's service as much as possible, even the bad experiences. If someone came from a very difficult childhood but became a devotee, then one can inspire others to become devotees by giving them some guidance of how to overcome their problems of their difficult childhood. Just like in Chaitanya Lila, there was one thief, a Brahmin thief. He saw Lord Nityananda one day on the Sankirtan party. And he decided, because Lord Nityananda at that time was covered with jewels and gold. Lord Nityananda is an Avaduta. Sometimes he shows different aspects of a devotee living in the material world, who's beyond the material world. Decorated with so many ornaments of gold and jewels. When the Brahmin saw Lord Nityananda, he thought the Supreme Creator, by his mercy, has put all the jewels and gold in one place for us to steal. So he wanted to make arrangements with his fellow band of thieves to steal all the gold and jewels from Lord Nityananda's personal body. So he got his friends together and they made a plan, because Lord Nityananda was staying at one of the devotees' houses. And they decided that night, after worshiping Durga Devi, they'd break into the house where Lord Nityananda was, steal all his gold and jewels. So they did their worship to Durga, and they sharpened their swords and waited for the night to become dark so they could break into the house and steal the jewels and gold. So they did that, but by Krishna's arrangement, all the thieves, they fell asleep. So they woke up the next morning and they said, "What happened? Why did you fall asleep?" "Well, why did you fall asleep?" "You're a rascal, you fell asleep, but you also fell asleep." So the head Brahmin thief, he said, "Don't worry." He said, "There'd be other opportunities." So later on, another auspicious time came to steal the jewels from Lord Nityananda. They went through the same rituals to Durga Devi, sharpened their swords, did a sacrifice to her, got ready to steal the jewels and the gold. But when they approached the house where Lord Nityananda was, there were huge guards patrolling the house. They were quite large, more than 3 meters each, 2 meters each. They looked so strong, each one of them, that they could easily defeat the whole band of thieves. So they thought this is not a very good time to steal from Lord Nityananda. So they went back, waiting for a more auspicious time when the guards would disappear. Finally, the day came. They decided this is the day we're going to definitely steal. They went through their rituals again, worshiping Durga Devi, offering wine and meat, and doing the sacrifice, sharpening their swords. they went to attack the house of Lord Nityananda, but suddenly Lord Indra cast clouds all over the sky. So the thieves became blind, they couldn't see anywhere. And they all stumbled everywhere. Some of them stumbled into the moat which was surrounding Lord Nityananda's house and fell in. And in the moat, there were scorpions stinging them. Others fell into the bamboo bushes with the thorns, got entangled, or were constantly being stung by the thorns. And by the different wasps that were also in the bushes. Then Lord Indra decided to torture them even more by sending cold hailstones to beat them practically to death. So at this time, the Brahmin thief, he thought, obviously this is not an ordinary personality, this is Lord Nityananda, that this is all by Krishna's arrangement, by God's arrangement. So then he became enlightened that actually it was by mercy that Lord Nityananda was showing him. And he decided to surrender to Lord Nityananda. So as soon as that thought entered his mind, then Indra stopped the hailstones. The light, the sun came, the moonlight came out again. All the thieves got released from their thorns, from the biting of the scorpions, and they all dispersed, except for the Brahmin thief, who broke into the house, the door, and fell on the ground, surrendering to Lord Nityananda. So all the associates of Lord Nityananda recognized that this Brahmin was a head thief, and they were shocked. So Lord Nityananda, but the thief was praying for the mercy of Lord Nityananda, and Lord Nityananda gave him his mercy. Later on, the thief became a great devotee of Lord Nityananda. So what did he do? He went all around the country and met with his previous associates who were all thieves and converted them to also become devotees of Krishna. So this is called utilizing one's experience in Krishna service. Even if one is a head thief, one can also make many other people who are thieves into devotees of Krishna. So our experience is important. And so there's some service for everyone in Krishna service, but especially if we can develop some smaller group of friends that we meet together with on a regular basis, talk about Krishna, inspire, give us each other instructions how to improve our worship of Krishna, our chanting of japa, inspire each other to do some service, maybe together, according to our inspiration and shape, and according to our abilities, according to our experiences. And then as one becomes more inspired, then there'll be a burning desire as Krishna gives us his association more and more intimately, as Krishna's devotees become more and more part of our lives, then we develop the same burning desire as Lord Chaitanya and his associates to give Krishna consciousness to others. And therefore one will become enthusiastic to engage in telling others about Krishna in some way or another. So this is best done, Statam Prasangam Mama Virya Samvido Bhavanti Rakarna Rasayanam Kata, as mentioned in this verse, that in the association of devotees, devotional service becomes more real. So we have to develop our Krishna consciousness in association with other devotees that we can exchange these loving exchanges with, and that we can learn tolerance, we can learn acceptation and appreciation, because there has to be some regular association of devotees where we're learning how to not only develop humility by appreciation, but also tolerance, like a tree. And then as that appreciation grows, then our desire to become the center of attraction will diminish, and our appreciation and putting others in the center of our lives, with Krishna in the center, and putting others into Krishna's center. So there's a process, and it's available to all of us. We just have to understand it properly and then take advantage of it, as mentioned in this verse. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions or comments? So I'll read the verse again. Twantagatam papam jananam punya karamanam persons who acted piously in previous lives, in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the duality of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. Acted previously, acted and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and engage themselves in my service with determination. Any questions? Thank you.
Guru Maharaj, one question from Mataji Radha Govinda in Zoom chat.
Okay. You mentioned that we should appreciate and respect in our minds the devotees that are at least chanting Hare Krishna. But how can we not dislike devotees that are inimical to our spiritual master and God's sister? Is it not okay to dislike devotees that criticize your own spiritual master, or that steal the plate, the Maha plate you left in the temple president's room? Is it not okay to dislike devotees that don't want to give a room in the temple ashram to my God's sister? Dislike? Well, as we appreciate within the mind, but we don't intimately associate with them. In other words, what is the value of disliking anyone? What do we get from it? What gain is there? We don't appreciate it. If someone is inimical to our spiritual master, then we just don't associate with them. But we find the good quality with them. And of course, no one is absolutely inimical to anyone. One is inimical to something they've done or something they've said, etc., etc. So there may be some value, this is the material world we're living in. Not everyone is a pure devotee of Krishna, and therefore they can find fault with anyone. As I said in my lecture, Prabhupada said they even found fault with Lord Chaitanya. Ramachandra Puri, he spent his life finding fault with the devotees. But still, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu treated him respectfully, took him as his spiritual master. But he sometimes neglected him also. He didn't pay very much attention to him. So we have to develop the discrimination, how to appreciate but not get entangled. Appreciate what's actually valid, because when devotees are engaged in devotional service, what they're doing, which is right, is actually the spiritual energy. It's not their energy, it's the spiritual energy we're seeing. And what they're doing wrong, it's not their energy either, it's the material energy. The soul is transcendental, eternal, beyond the modes of nature. Despite contact with the material body or Arjuna, the soul is neither doing anything nor is he entangled. Therefore, when someone is doing something that we don't think is very positive for their own sake or for others, then we understand it's simply the illusory energy, and we don't take it seriously. But if they're doing whatever they're doing, which is positive in Krishna service, is under the spiritual energy, and we appreciate that, because it's Krishna. And if we don't appreciate it, then we're not appreciating Krishna. And if we become caught up with what they're doing wrong, then we're doing the wrong thing too. We'll be just as liable to be under the influence of the losing energy as they are. So it takes some practice and some proper discrimination so that we can always be loving and happy under any circumstance. Yes, Antaryami.
Dear Gurudeva, please Accept Mahaba obeisances. Thank you for the lecture. Мы продолжаем общаться в новороссийске по вашей прекрасной книге о здоровье, проводить встречи раз в неделю. И вчера была встреча, я, к сожалению, не смог присутствовать на вашей лекции, очень жаль, я извиняюсь, на которой мы читали комментарий Прабхупады к Шримад Бхагаватам, где он говорит, что достигший совершенства йог подчиняет себе смерть, не покидая тело по своему желанию, в тот момент, когда может перенестись на нужную ему планету. Могли бы вы прокомментировать это высказывание, потому что ранее мы с вами общались о смерти на наших встречах, и вы сказали, что Прабхупада нигде такого не писал, что кто-то может победить смерть. Спасибо.
Hare Krishna Maharaj,
Yes.
thank you so much for a wonderful lecture. So Prabhu is referring to the verse that he was discussing yesterday in his group meeting. He apologizes he missed your lecture yesterday because they had a group meeting. And that group meeting, they were discussing the verse which describes that the yogi at the end of his life can control the place where he's going to go next. And he said that before he asked you, and you said that Srila Prabhupada never anywhere mentioned that somebody can actually be victorious over death and control his next destination. Could you please explain this verse?
Well, no one is an independent controller. Everyone depends upon Krishna. But if one develops for instance, if you practice lifting weight, eventually you can lift more and more weight. So if we practice the instructions of Krishna for mystic yoga, one of the practices will lead to the point where one can determine which planet one goes next. That in the realm of the Vedas, the Vedas give opportunities to do anything in this world, in the material of the spiritual world, how to direct our desires to accomplish anything. But that we have to find out from the proper authority, Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, if we have some particular desire. But one of those desires may be to go to another planet. We find in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita that Gokumara was able to go from one planet to the next, material and spiritual, simply by chanting Hare Krishna over a long period of time. By perfecting his chanting, he was able to Krishna transferred him from one planet to the next. Excuse me 1 second. Come in. So that's possible. But it's not, we shouldn't think we're doing it ourselves. We're not. Mystic power means the more we depend upon Krishna, the more we get mystic power. The closer we are to Krishna, who is Yogeshvara, the more of these mystic powers are manifested by his spiritual energy or his material energy, depending upon our consciousness. They're not independently, that's all manifested. They're always gifts from Krishna, depending on our surrender to him. Is that all right? Here's a pod.
Hare Krishna, good day. Please accept my humble obeisances, all glories to Prabhupada. I just wondering if you want to give Bodhis a quick update on your health, because we heard that you had a back injury.
Очень быстро, потому что у вас спина болела.
Well, this material world is ever changing. So so every day my back is a little bit different, but at least it seems to be going generally towards improvement.
Ну, в принципе, продвигается к тому, что мне будет лучше.
More than that, I can't say because it's all up to Krishna and different factors. But anyhow, we're here.
И от различных факторов, которые имеют влияние.
We're talking about Krishna.
I'm sorry, Maharaj, I don't know who turned on my voice. Could you please turn it off?
What's that?
Sorry, Maharaj. Somebody has turned on my voice, and I can hear myself. Sorry. 1 second.
So my devotional service is going.
Ольга, пожалуйста, выключите.
But my material body is not always so pleasant to be in. I know, but it's an opportunity to think more about Krishna than trying to be happy in the material world. So it's an opportunity. As it says, no one gets out of this material world alive. So we have to practice being a little suffering, or else at the time of death, how we're going to be able to think about Krishna. If our whole life is pleasant all the time, we won't be capable of facing unpleasantness and think about Krishna at the same time. So Krishna has arranged it so that sometimes there's some suffering, so that in the midst of the suffering, we can go on thinking about Krishna too. But it's not so bad if we can go on with our service. But it's nice that we appreciate that you're concerned. But anyway, we'll see what Krishna has to do. But I think it's going positively in general. But at the end of life, ultimately what's positive is that we've practiced enough thinking about Krishna under any circumstances that we can remember him at the time of leaving our body too. Just one more question. It looks like Niguna wants to ask a very intelligent question.
No, I cannot ask intelligent question because I don't have so much intelligence. But I will ask you something. And it's just really interesting me, Maharaj, to know Lord Brahma sits on the lotus flower and he says he hears the word tapa. And they say it's coming from the alphabet 9 letter 20, that the letters exist before creation.
Everything exists before creation. We're here since time memorial. We've gone through trillions and trillions of Brahmas. This is just a replay, that's all. There's nothing new in the material world. It's the same energies in every creation, same alphabet, etc. There's some variations due to the karma, but the principles are always the same. Sacrifice, charity, and penance, as Krishna says, they must be performed, tapa. So that's eternal principle, tapa. It's not just for this creation, it's for every creation. All right. Thank you very much. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Преданные, дорогие,